And we continue Dirshu Mishnah Berurah. We are holding in the we are holding in Siman Kuf Gimel. We begin Siman Kuf Gimel today as the Mechaber coins Siman Kuf Gimel. Mishim izdamin loi ruach bitfilasai oi itosh. Someone that it happens, he prepared his body, he used the bathroom, he did perhaps what he was supposed to do, but then in the middle of tefillah, he has a ruach or an itosh, as we'll see in a minute. What exactly should he do? So says the Mechaber over here, Hayayimid b'tefillah, someone is standing in davening, v'yatza mimenu, Hayayimid b'tefillah yatzin aruach milamata, and he lets out some gas. What should he do? He has to wait at shichla reach. He has to wait for the scent to leave a chayzer misbalel and then return to daven. Says the Mishnah Berurah over here, ha-reach, sivkat and aleph, explains the Mishnah Berurah, the meikara asra afilu b'divrei Torah, because if there's an ikr there, not just a smell, as we've learned already extensively, then it is asra afilu b'divrei Torah. U'kalel b'simin ayin tes sivtas, as we've seen in Siman ayin tes, all the halachas over there. So what does he have to do? And the truth is, we've really mentioned these halachas at some level in passing over there as well. So what does he have to do? He has to wait until the scent dissipates, and then chayzer misbalas of cotton beis hainu lemakim shapasak, goes back to the place that he stopped. Afilu shach shapasak areach, even if he waited after the smell stopped, and the amount of time that elapsed was enough time to finish the entire tefillah. Again, if he would have went right away and he started at the moment that the smell stopped, then it would not have been such a long hefsek. But he waited a little bit longer. He doesn't have to go back to the beginning. Based on the which we learned in the Ramban Samachay. As we'll see in a moment. So let's understand what's going on here in Sif Beis. Says the Mechaber. Someone feels that he's about to let out some gas, and it's causing him a lot of pain, and he can't hold it in. He should walk backward 4 amos and let out the gas, and wait until the smell stops. And then what should he say? It's a special tefillah. Hashem, Yitzharatanu nekavim chalulim chalulim. I'm embarrassed. I'm talking to you. I'm in the middle of davening. And what happened? And this happened to me. I'm embarrassed. He says to Hashem, and then he walks forward, walks back to where he was up to, and he continues davening. Says Ramav, he says the Ramah, this whole halacha, perhaps, according to some, is only applicable when he davens in his house. To be a big embarrassment in the middle of Shemon Esrei, middle of davening, you have to walk backwards, you have to wait, to be a big embarrassment as well. And you also don't have to say this tefillah. Rak, what do you have to do? You wait for the smell to dissipate. And it says, Ramah, that's the minhag, that this tefillah, this Rabbeinu Yelamin, does not apply when one is davening b'tzibur. Says the Mishnah Berurah over here, Sivkat Gimel V'Eino Yachal, meaning he can't hold in. B'lavachi, comments the Mishnah Berurah. What do you mean you can't hold in? B'lavachi, without that, Ein lo loitzi ruach v'shambanim b'tefillah. Of course, if one is able to hold in the gas, if one is able to hold in the smell, it is forbidden to allow anything to leave the body while you're davening. There's no concept, says Mishnah Berurah, about the shaksu. Only if you hold back actual going to the bathroom. But holding in any gases or airs or whatnot, it's not within the rules of Baltic Shaksu. When here Ali says Mishnah Berurah, Yer lahaziz at tefillin, you should move the tefillin l'natkan, shay menachal al-makayim. You should move away the tefillin, so the tefillin should not be sitting on their place while one lets out some gas. Ki also lafiyah with tefillin, as we've learned, you're not allowed to let out gas while one is wearing tefillin. So now in the Mechaber, we learned this interesting halacha that what does one do? He takes 4 steps backwards. Achayrav devinin sheipanim, panav neged hamakayim, sheischal isbalel. You can't turn around because you want your face to be facing Hashem, like when you began davening, to show that you're dying. You're going to come back in a moment. If you look at also, you shouldn't walk forwards or to the sides. And then you say this tefillah Sivkat Hey says you're middle of Shemayna Esrei. Still, you say this tefillah move seconds. Either way, you're pausing to let the smell dissipate. Fasting chiddush. Therefore, you're even able to be mafsek. It's not called a hefsek. And say this almost an apology to Hashem in the middle. And then that's a serving the axel of the makim kaidin a reboin. Chayadim holds you first walk forwards and then you say the reboin. Lamakish apasik sivkat and zayin l'chayra kavana explains Mishnah Berurah. Let's chilas habracha shapasik by go back to the beginning of the bracha that you're up to. Chamam sim kovdal tzev hey. Vayne kod machiklam the sham nalach v'shem achrayim. Ayin le'al simin pei ratzolaymar. This is the Ramah. Then Isbayer Sham, Dim Shak, the Ligmar is Kulai, then Chayz L'Roish, as we've seen many times. If the break that you had was the amount of time to finish the whole Shemon Esrei, then you have to go back to the beginning. We don't mitzaref the extra few seconds to walk. The test when one is in shul, says in Shmur, it's good to think this in one's heart. And I guess we'll just point out that even if one isn't going to say the tefillah, maybe one's not going to even remember the whole text of the tefillah. But certainly in his heart, one should feel bad. One has to have this level of apology that in the middle of Shemayna Esrei, in the middle of davening, this occurred. Says Mechaber Gimel Amitashet B'Tfilasam Melamata Simin Raloi Melmala Simin Yafaloi. So says Mishnah Berurah Sevkatan Yod Yishem Dedav Kishmefiach Lekol. Says Mishnah Berurah, some say this is only if this happened Bikol, and continues the Mishnah Berurah V'Hamagin Avraham. V'Hamagin Avraham Chaylek, and he argues Do Adin B'Likol. Says Magen Avraham, no, whether there is a sound or not, it is the same halacha. V'Gam Bozeh, and concludes the Mishnah Berurah. V'Gam Bozeh. Excuse me, we're having a minor issue over here. You know, the fine nuance of a difference between the itosh and sif gimel and the letting out the gas, the roch malamat and sif aleph, it seems that in sif gimel, it's literally a sneeze. So we understand what that means, that if it comes from the nose, but what exactly is going to be the difference if he passes gas from milmata and sif gimel versus the passing gas in sif aleph? We're going to leave it at that. So before we call it a day, we're going to kuftalit. We're going to leave for the next year. But for a moment over here, let's. Do we have Dirshu note number 1? 1 second. Here we go. Let's take a little bit of a Dirshu over here. Says the Dirshu, we are Kuf Gimel note 1 in the Dirshu that the shots, very probably common case. What happens if a shliach sibur lets out some gas? So for him to stop in the middle of davening, it's pretty embarrassing. Says Hashem Izalmin, covered abrios. He doesn't have to stop. He's able to keep on davening. What about everyone else? And the smell reaches to them. This is something that we learned previously. Siman Ayin Tes. We learned in Siman Ayin Tes here as well. Aser Krishma and Tefillah. They have to wait for the smell to dissipate. But over there we explained, but Talmud Torah is mutter. So while one is learning, this was part of the reason that we're human beings, we're not malachim. So while one is learning, if someone smells something, he does not have to stop learning. But if one smells during Krishma and Tefillah, he does have to stop. And we continue with, let's look at Dirshu number 5 over here. Number 5 points out, Hamadavar, what is the reason that you shouldn't let out any gas during davening? As we explained, Ukinai gadol, and it's a terrible embarrassment to let out gas at such a moment. Okay, now a few more. Note number 7 here in the Dirshu. Note number 7 here in the Dirshu. Here it is. Gam in Talis, excuse me. Note number 8 in the Dirshu. Note number 8 in the Dirshu says, well, the Indian talis kosav lael shiachlis ate, be able to put in your talis. You know that you're going to have to take off. You know you're going to have to let out gas. Talis is a lower level halacha, and you let it wear your talis while one is passing gas. Now, we really should look up for a moment. In Dirshu number 7, he points out, what if your tefillin, because we just said you should move your tefillin out of the place. What if the tefillin are not tight? So says the Buchacha, that's not considered on their place. However, the Beis Baruch, Sefer the Chayadim writes, still you're not allowed to pass gas. And I guess the best l'chatchila would be to move it from its place. Number 9 was the fact you're allowed to say this Ribono Olamim even during Shemona Esrei. The Emek Bracha explains, since the tefillah already stopped, therefore you're allowed to have a longer stop, and as well say the Yiratzon. And he says, an interesting idea of the Emek Bracha, that let's say you stopped anyways, you're saying this Ribono Olamim, and boom, they got up to Kaddish Kedusha. He says, Yesh La'ayin, so to think about if you're able to answer Kaddish Kedusha. And just in number 14, and that will conclude, says the Dirshu number 14, Lahazat Film in Mekayma, and the Minchas Yitzchak explains, you have to do that, even though it's embarrassing. Excuse me, yeah, even if it's embarrassing. So the Minchas Yitzchak points out that there's a middle level over here. Even though the Ramah is saying that when you're in shul, you don't have to walk the forceps back, you don't have to say the Ribono Olamim because it's terribly embarrassing. Fine. But says the Minchas Yitzchak, if you're passing gas, you should not be doing that with your tefillin. It's embarrassing to start moving your tefillin in the middle of davening, okay? But that level of embarrassment one has to do, we'll pick up in Siman Kuf Dalet in the next year, B'siyato Dishmayu.